So speaking of video, we've been seeing a whole bunch of advancements from Runway and Luma and Minimax and Kling and Midjourney and everybody else. So everybody is working to try to make video as good as possible, as flexible as possible. In fact, just in the past couple weeks, Runway's dropped a whole bunch of stuff where like you could basically just have a video of Mason walking down the street and say, I want Mason, instead of the shirt that he's wearing now, I want to see Mason wearing a tux as he walks down the street. Type that in and it's there. And it's good and believable and has the right light reflections and everything else as far as most casual observances would show. But as people have been starting to talk about like what's the end game here? Hollywood has always been the thing that people are talking about, and that's where like the lawsuits and everything else are coming from, because some of the creative work to train these models has been essentially pirated. And some of it's been scraped from YouTube, which I guess we could always argue about whether that's open and free to be scraped or not. But it's out there, easier to grab than like Hollywood movies. So most of the lawsuits are coming from people who would make money otherwise.
I mean, it's because those places have the money to mount lawsuits too. And like
they do.
The impetus,
individual creators on YouTube are not going to do much. Like I know that all my books are in the training models for large language models. And we've seen that in the way that you can search for those, as are just about every author that's out there. Most of us aren't going to do anything or be able to do anything about that unless there's like a class that we can join on a lawsuit. And even then, some of us would take different positions on whether we would want to join that class or not. I personally haven't done the soul searching to know if I'm really offended about it, or if I'm just like, okay, interesting. That happened.
I know, because I fight with that all the time, because like if one person had scraped the entire internet to make this cool robot technology, I feel like it would be so much more forgivable. But because it was these big for-profit companies and then they're doing all this other shady stuff, it's really hard. I don't have my own feelings sorted out about that either.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the Information had an interesting article from the past. I'm going to try to get this to a size that will show on screen here.
I swear, someday I will fix our screen share thing so that it stops chopping us both off in such awkward ways.
Oh, no worries. All right. So the Information had an article that says Runway Luma target sales to robotics companies, because as you were mentioning, in order to do really good video generation, you're creating a world simulator, complete with physics and the way that light gets reflected. And along with physics comes weight and mass and flexibility and all the tolerances that would be needed in order for a robot to interact with the world without being essentially like a buffoon that's, the bull in the china shop analogy. Because imagine a robot that doesn't understand strength or physics picking up a baby would be a really, really scary thing.
Yeah.
And even maybe when it does understand physics, it's a really, really scary thing. But we're thinking more about the ethical implications at that point rather than the physical.
Yeah, baby was a loaded example. But I know
exactly. Yep. So they're targeting that because I think all of us could imagine a couple of years ago when you're saying video models that might help like self-driving cars.
Right.
Because of all the interactions.
Tesla was really stuck on, we aren't going to use LiDAR. We're only going to use cameras and image processing. And honestly, I am still of the opinion that they kind of shot themselves in the foot by doing that and not using any LiDAR. But it's interesting that now...
way behind Waymo because of that, for sure. But
exactly. Yeah. But now these capabilities are kind of there to do it with just video processing with these kind of deep learning models that can infer depth better.
Yeah, I do think that the people that were kind of pushing that early on were ahead of their time. And when you look at self-driving systems now, like LiDAR mapped roads are still the things that are powering a lot of the most confident models that are out there for self-driving. But at the same time, anytime you have a LiDAR mapped road that doesn't react in real time, it's just based on pre-existing memory, that doesn't account for potholes or pedestrians or
stuff in the road,
or anything else.
Yeah.
So you always, and I think where Tesla was really thinking ahead of their time is that, humans don't have LiDAR. All we have is visual and auditory senses around us and an understanding of the world as we've seen it. So they were making the assumption, which I think is relatively fair, that if humans with 2 eyes, 2 ears, and a brain can do that, then maybe a machine that has simulated eyes, ears, and a brain can do as well.
I do think there's something to real-time LiDAR, but...
Yeah, I think there's something to real-time all of it.
Exactly.
I think as soon as you say that one of the two is useless, you've kind of set your path, and you may be ignoring critical functionality.
Exactly, and I think largely it was driven by cost saving because it's more expensive to add LiDAR arrays and cameras than it is to not.
Yeah, and it's bulky and doesn't look great, and Waymos don't really look elegant when you see them going down the street in San Francisco.
No, but it's gotten smaller, so yeah. But anyway, we're off track a little. Although I guess they're technically robots.
Yeah. I mean they're technically robots, and that's where some of the Luma and runway stuff is going as well. Is the CEOs of these companies are looking and they're saying, all right, so there is all of this really interesting data that we have that shows how the world works, because we need that in order to create a reasonable simulation that's visually appealing that could be used in Hollywood or some other creative service. But at the same time, maybe there's even more value in being able to show a machine how the world works so that machine can interact with the world. And so that's where they really think the big money is going to come. And I'll just get down to a couple quotes here. One is, you might think of Runway as a company that's mostly working with media, with Hollywood, and with videos. CEO and co-founder said in an interview with The Information's TITV. But the thing is that many of the underlying capabilities and features of the models themselves are also very useful and applicable in wide domains of industries. So then they talk about robotics. For instance, Runway's AI model can generate video clips of what a self-driving car might see as it turns left at an intersection. So if you think of those old TV shows where you have a psychic that is, they're like, all right, I saw Mason just took a drink. I can see 3 realities now.
Yeah, time stops, camera split screen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're getting at with this, right? Is that the model could then render multiple different, almost multiverse-like possibilities and based on different factors that it might see. Is like, all right, if the kid over here in the right side of the frame starts to move left in a second, this reality could happen. If that person stays still, this reality could happen. If this other person at the other side of the frame decides to stop, here's the reality that could happen. Really, really important for self-driving cars. But the other unlock that they see is in robotics and robotic interactions. So Luma sees another use for video models in robotics beyond training the AI models that will pilot the robots. Our bet is that Luma ends up building the robot brain. While with Luma's AI model running the robot, if the robot is considering 2 different actions or picks up a product it hasn't used before, the video model can simulate the outcomes of the different actions or the different ways of using the new product and then decide which action to take.
Yeah.
So Luma is in discussion with robotics companies. Runway's models have also improved, and they're getting interest from robotics companies as well. And it does. It just makes sense.
That's really interesting because something that you hear people say often is that AI doesn't know how to deal with new things, right? Because it can only be trained on existing things. But that forward prediction, if you have a sufficiently advanced way to generate physically accurate things and an inbuilt understanding, I guess, in the embeddings of how physics works, you could, by interacting with an object, seeing how it moves, and then doing some forward prediction, testing them, this AI could learn about new things in a similar way to how we learn about new things.
Yeah.
Pick it up, poke it,
it's all
squeeze it.
extrapolation.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's I've looked at similar, 10 other similar objects like that, and I've interacted with it, so I can make an educated guess that this is how I could interact with that in the most safe and predictable way.
That's so neat. I wish it wasn't bundled up with the fear of replacing workers and everything, because technologically that's so cool.
Or accidentally crushing your baby.
Yeah, or accidentally.
They should baby test everything.
Right. Well, I mean, we've had a lot of research in prosthetics with that, with
yeah, they have.
So I'm sure.
Yeah, with like amputees and replicated limbs and all that. There's been a ton of work, especially in my lifetime. I remember back when everything was like really, really crude, not elegant at all, and not really with a lot of finesse or nuance. And then now there's so much great work being done in that area and people are able to live really meaningful lives with the replacement limbs that they have.
Yeah. Our next segment has absolutely no bearing on anything particularly useful to reality. We're going to talk about AI-generated fashion models. Well, I guess it has a bearing on reality in that it's kind of something that would put models out of work. Let's take a quick break.
And it's still more video stuff.
Video killed the podcast star. We'll be right back after this.
Right.
That was nothing.
This is the FAIK Files.